preparing right now, and then I'll go from there. I had to make sure I spelled your name right because I saw the A instead of the N, and so it's the E. So I'm make sure I update that when we're on. Okay. All right, folks. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Bucks of America podcast. I am your host, Jeff Vance, and I'm live on YouTube. We're live right now, which is awesome. I have my good buddy, good friend here, Rendell Erik, the legend himself, the 2021 big buck out of Iowa, the freestyling master. I mean, he's been on a dozen podcasts. He's been on 10 this year alone. I do recommend going to check out his stuff on the Sportsman Empire, who did 3 episodes there. He was on the DIY Sportsman 5 times, and he also was on Talk About It Outdoors. And Rendell has got a lot of information, all these podcasts, and my goal here is to talk about something that is not been on any of the other ones, because he's got a lot of information, and I'm encouraging you all to go out there and listen to those podcasts, and you'll probably find a lot of information. I know I have. I applied some techniques this weekend on Saturday, got on some deer, and then I'll go into that story a little bit later and how things went through and the emotional roller coaster I went through a period of time. But this year has been quite interesting because both Rendell and I have been sick. He got COVID right at the beginning of the kickoff of Nebraska. I got sick. I had walking pneumonia, kicked off right when the season started off. So that put me underneath the water for a while. And I just kind of maintain being healthy and just shooting, and now I'm just kind of focused and maintaining that consistency that I want to be out in the woods as much as I possibly can. So I'm pretty excited about that. And man, Rendell, why don't you, dude, how you been? You healthy?
Yeah, I'm good to go now, man.
That's good. So you were mentioning to me that you made a couple of trips out to Missouri. How was that? Tell us about those trips.
It was good. I got a lot of intel. It was really hot though. The deer movement was pretty non-existent, honestly. They weren't moving very far from their beds. I did a lot of scouting. I hunted some off of last year's data because I kind of hunted the same area last year a little bit. So I was checking some areas where I found a lot of buck bedding and things, getting my bearings on like new food source switches and stuff, because I didn't make it down there to postseason scout in the spring. So for the first couple of days, I kind of did that, met a lot of really cool people at the campground, and just started diving in on a bunch of buck beds that I knew where they were at, and seen a lot of deer. I passed up a lot of smaller bucks. I did find some mature bucks finally on the second weekend I went down there. I was getting more on the mature bucks. There was like a micro cold front, I call it. It was like a 20 degree. It's like 103 degrees, and then it dropped to like 50 degrees for like one day. And a lot of the deer came out, and I was glassing in the mornings. And I got a couple of mature bucks located. When I get done in Iowa, I'm going to slide back down there and try to harvest one of them.
So tell me about, you ran into a group of kids over there in Missouri. Why don't you were telling me about it. Tell the audience about that experience.
Yeah, I just pulled in this little podunk middle of nowhere campground, and there was a couple of kids that were staying there too. And I just walked over and introduced myself, and they looked like they seen a ghost when I told them what my name was. And they just been listening to a lot of my podcasts, and they knew who I was. So it was kind of interesting to me because I'm not used to that yet. People know who I am, and just in the middle of nowhere, it's crazy. And they were all from Alabama, so it was pretty interesting, like just how small of a community the hunting world is when you run into guys all the way from Alabama and Missouri. And they were great guys, like shared a lot of intel. We'd stay up at night, and they'd ask me a bunch of questions. Just a camaraderie and friendships made. It was really awesome experience. And it's a lot of like different aspects about whitetail hunting that I love, just going out of state and stuff, because you meet all kinds of new people and that camp atmosphere. And it was really awesome just to meet some younger guys that were really getting after it. I mean, they were putting the miles on. They were really trying to learn to hunt the way that I hunt too. So that was really cool. I got to really dive into a lot of different tactics and encourage them. So it was like a mentorship kind of thing that I think's missing in hunting a lot sometimes. People are like trying to keep all the intel to themselves, but I was more like, mentoring ship, sharing intel. Even if it was a spot that I knew about that they found that I really liked, I still was like, yeah, this is where the buck's set up. This is why he's there. This is how you can move in on him and kill him. And they tried a lot of different tactics and things. So it was really interesting to see how their hunts and stuff played out. And then I could bounce around based on what they were doing or what they didn't find or whatever. It was really cool.
So you'd mentioned to me they made a few mistakes. Do you want to break down what you found comical about what they did?
They dove right into the buck betting like a couple days before season opened, and then right when season opened, instead of scouting the perimeter of the bedding areas that they assume were bedding, they were just crashing right in there and then leaving their scent, and just bumping a bunch of bucks and stuff like that, which is fine. I mean, sometimes you have to do that, and it's just a learning experience. I mean, sometimes you have to do that to know where they're at, and you can do a bump and dump on them. But that early in the season, I don't know. I just like to scout my way in, look for sign and stuff like that. But I don't know. They thought it was comical too. I thought it was funny. So, I mean, lesson learned, right? So that's how I learned. I didn't have a mentor either. So I've made millions of mistakes in the woods before I learned, like, all right, well, I keep doing this and this is happening. So I need to not do this, So it's just interesting. Like, I've made more mistakes than most people have because I never had anybody teach me how to hunt. Really, I just figured it out on my own. Plus, information out there on the web and just talking to people.
I'm in the same boat you are. I spend a lot of time doing a lot of my stuff, my old stuff. And I know from previous podcasts, you were a military family, so you bounced around. My dad wasn't much of a deer hunter. He was this just did the muzzleloading season. That's about it. They had a place to go. They walked out on private land. So there wasn't a whole lot of scouting in that aspect. But what we did do is we spent a lot of time in the woods going after squirrels and rabbits, and then also going after pheasants. So that's what he was really passionate about. That's what found him a little bit more excited. And so that's where I learned a lot of my techniques from him. We're doing that. So I kind of get a little bored sitting in the tree stand. So being on public land, it gives you an opportunity to kind of bounce around. I do a lot of ground and pound. Like I'll either bring out just a chair, or I'll bring out my ghost blind and make it work through that way. Because you had mentioned that being able to, when you're in your stand, you actually utilize your background, and you don't think about like the tree or anything. You figure out what's in the background of you to make you blend into the area. And I thought like that's really smart. I don't never recognized it. That's something that I did. And it's like, I do that a lot of times. Like I will actually I'll back into a brush or a book, like walk into a bush backwards, set up a tripod, kind of mount this little dome here if try to not to disturb the environment, and just kind of sit in there and see what all happens. I've had some really fun experiences. Like I've had does 7, 11, 12 yards out in front of me, and I used to use nose jammer. And then we get curious. And I'd spray like in a horror movie where they do the circle of salt. I just do a circle of nose jammer, and they would come right up. And it's like the fun ones are they're staring right at you, and they're like something there, but I don't know what it is. Like I can see it, and there was one hunt last year where I thought she was at 25 yards, and so I thought she was at 30 yards. So I set it up to 30, she was actually 25. And this was the same day I didn't bring my rangefinder out, and I draw back and I do a clear miss over her. But the most profound experience was not having anything in front of me. I had to grab my bow, like slow motion, and get it up, and then get it back to full draw, all while being practically wide open. But she knows something was there, so it's like waiting for her head to dip, then come back and dip, and just kind of play, because she'd fake me out a couple times. It's fun. I'm sure you have similar stories to that.
Yeah, I run into some interesting things. It's just like when does spot you. I do a lot of crazy setups, like trees and places people would never imagine to set up in. Sometimes I put a ghillie suit on and I'll just sit in a CRP, corn. I'm just whatever it takes kind of guy. Like if I have to be on the ground, I'm going to be on the ground. If sometimes I'll carry a chair in with me, even with my saddle and my sticks and all that, just in case I need it. Because a lot of times I've already been in the area, so I kind of know like, okay, well, I might actually have to be on the ground here. So sometimes I'll carry a chair. I don't use any scent stuff at all. I don't mess with that stuff because it'll fool like does and stuff, but the mature bucks, they don't like any of that stuff. So it just blows them out. So
Completely
I
agree.
don't
I
mess.
stopped using it.
Yeah. And then yeah, like yesterday I was in a crazy tree, like a god awful tree. I was in there like a human Tetris. I'm like, I don't even know how I'm gonna shoot out of this thing, but I was like, I had to be in it, so that's what I was in. So just setting up crazy stuff. I've had deer just walk right out to me 3 yards away and I'm just knelt down in some grass. I mean, if you don't move, they'll kind of like do that head bob and kind of stomp to try to get you to have a reaction, and not looking a deer in the eyes helps. Like I just keep my head down or I close my eyes, when they're staring at me, and then just don't move and they'll move on by you sometimes. But every now and again, you get that big old nanny doe that's smart and she's just going to light you up no matter what you do.
Oh man, I've had my fair share of nanny does. My favorite one was a story of a 2013 opening day gun season in Minnesota, negative 13 degrees. And it was early in the morning. I was shooting light. I watch her come through and I see her through the thing. She sees me. I just see her stomping and she takes the whole herd and goes around. Well, later that day at 10 o'clock, I was told to go sit here and they were going to do a drive. And sure enough, she comes out 30 yards, heart shot. She rears up and she drops. And yeah, it's like I got my revenge because why not? It's like you get one of the most oldest does in the pack, and then as we take off her cape and the hindquarters, somebody had shot her in the ass with the slug, and so it managed to heal itself over. And I was like, they are such a remarkable animal, just even to repair themselves after getting a shot in the keister. And the fun side about the story, I got a deer and on that same drive, and then my buddy, there was a buck that came around the backside to a different holler. And he shot the buck. It was an 8-pointer. It was his first buck in a long time. So he was pretty ecstatic about that.
Yeah. Sometimes I think those older does are smarter than a lot of the bucks. They're really hard to hunt and kill a lot of times. They're smart. They'll even pick up your ground scent sometimes, like even not walking on it, just like the thermals or the wind will be blowing a certain way. And they might catch that ground scent. Or if you, like we're talking about ground hunting, like sometimes if you break off some stuff, I almost feel like they can catch that scent from all that trees being freshly broken. So even if I don't think they're smelling me, because I've actually went and I've broke open a spot to try to hunt in and it didn't work out, so I moved. And it could have been the ground scent, but I felt like they just caught that freshly broken branch smell. Because I don't know. I think some of the deer learn, like a lot of guys go in there and they clear all these shooting lanes and stuff. Deer pick up on that really fast. So those older deer got more experience with that kind of stuff. So sometimes I think they bust you because you actually clear too much or you break off a lot of stuff when you're trying to hide.
And probably change the pheromone levels. So this way they're able to figure it all out. Because I'm assuming that if you cut grass, it leaves an odor. So same thing should apply to breaking a branch in a tree. If you break a couple of branch down or you cut something out with a saw, it's going to release that smell that they're going to know and pick up on. And then that's where they'll, like a camera, they'll completely avoid you, walk all the way around you, and you'll never know that you were the cause of them completely avoiding you.
Yeah. It's really interesting how smart some deer are and how dumb other ones are. Some are just like, what was that deer thinking? Like, I don't even know. they all got their own unique personalities. That's why it's like really hard to have like one thing that's always going to work, because all deer are different and they all do different things and they all prefer to live different ways. And some are like really bullies and they're just really bold, and some are really skittish and scared and they don't come out a lot. So it's really interesting the different tactics you got to deploy and really learn a buck.
Yeah, I know this guy right here I shot here a couple of years ago. He was the bully buck, but if you look how thick that neck was, and he fought a lot of bucks off that property that I used to hunt in Minnesota. And one, I took him, and then I go out and check my trail cams a couple of weeks later. I have like 4 new bucks that I've never seen before. They're little small ones, like little 4 keys, maybe a little basket 6, never seen before. And all of a sudden they're there. It's like, explains why I'd never seen him before, because he just kind of dominated the entire area.
Yeah, they push a lot of deer off. A lot of videos on YouTube and TV, and even running the cell cams and all that. They'll get that one buck in there, and you want to try to get them out quick because they do push a lot of bucks off your property. So if you see a bully buck, you should, put a target on him pretty fast and try to get him out of there.
Oh, definitely. No, how long you've been hunting saddles, or should say, how long you've been hunting in saddles?
This is my 4th year, I think.
So what made you decide to switch from using, I don't know if you were using those lone wolf ones or those other stands or climbers, to transition into a saddle?
I was using just tree stands, mobile one. Well, I used to carry like some ungodly heavy stuff before, like there was like really the big shift in the mobile hunting. I was already doing it, but I was carrying like 60-pound stuff with me.
Wow.
Yeah, like some steel sticks and the big old steel, like 50-pound tree stands, big giant hang-ons. But and then I transitioned into some lighter stuff. Like I ran a lot of the XOP stuff, and it's still really heavy and kind of bulky. You get hung up, make a lot of noise. And plus I'm 6'8", so man, it's really hard for me to stay still because it's just really hard on my back because my knees sit so far above my waist. It messes with my back a lot, your sciatic nerves and stuff like that. So I just got tired of feeling like I got run over by a semi truck every time I got out of the tree, and I was moving around a lot, and I would like stand, sit, stand. I'm more of a sitter when I'm in the tree stand because I feel like you move way less when you're sitting. And just like the way I set up, I'm already predicting where the buck's going to come out at, and I just want to draw and shoot. So the saddle is just different. It was just something I wanted to try, but just because I heard a lot of the information about it, talked to a lot of people. I tried it out at like the Iowa Deer Classic when Tether was there the first year, and thought it was a lot more comfortable and a more mobile, less weight. And I didn't, because how you're going in to like hunt and your tree stand's getting hung up on like overhanging branches and you're making all kinds of noise and stuff's getting caught on it. So the saddle really eliminated a lot of that for me, just going to small, low profile. And I like to scout before I hunt too on my way in. And sometimes I'll end up going 10 miles in a place just to find somewhere I want to hunt. And over time, that weight will drag you down. Like I don't care about like micromanaging ounces, but when you shave off, 20, 30 pounds off your setup, man, that's a huge deal right there. And just the stealthiness, because a lot of these bucks bed in like really thick areas or higher elevations. You're climbing ravines, you're jumping creeks, I'm walking through rivers. Like I'm more of the extreme access, whatever it takes. Like if I got to crawl 200 yards through a river bottom, I'm going to do it, like whatever it takes. That no balls, no bucks mentality.
Oh yeah, I completely understand that. When I would come into a new property and such, I'd walk the entire perimeter inside Onyx. That's what I've done a couple of times now. Since I moved into Wisconsin, it's in the La Crosse area, it's all bluff country. So it's like there'll be times where I'm doing 150, 200 foot elevation changes, if not even higher. There's one, was it 2 years ago? I went up 600 foot elevation and I sit up on top of a bluff. Then I'm happy to run into somebody up there, and I'd turn into a conversation I just left. I didn't want to deal with him. It's like, I knew I was in the right being up there, but it's like, he's going to make my life difficult. So it's like, there's no sense in trying to prove that I'm right. So it's like, I'll just go out there. It's like, I already know the guy's name. Like Joel is my DNR guy that runs this piece of property. And it's like, cause it's like, there's farm management land. It's just like in Iowa, you have CRP, but Wisconsin, you have farm management land, forest management land. And I knew the guy's name because it's like, I've had some conversation with him regarding like legalese and stuff like that, and where all things are. Cause there's been a few times where I've come out to the property and there's no hunting signs. And it's like, well, did something change or anything like that? Because like I pay attention to the DNR website to make sure that the property I'm on is if there's anything that have pulled out of the FML or BLM or farm management land, I will make sure I don't go do that. Well, this year I've had an email, and today I emailed for the third time asking, okay, there's no trust, there's no hunting signs in here. This is still part of this thing. What's going on? Because apparently telling them to take them down is not working. And I wanted to find out, because it's like I like to mix up, because there's a couple places where I can hunt two different sides of the road. It's this way that I'm not putting so much scent in one area. And plus, it's like I like the idea. Like after listening to a couple of your podcasts, like why not just freestyle? Why not get out there and just try different tactics? And that's what I wanted to move into your approach with freestyle, because most of us all understand what freestyle is, but break it down on what you do when you park at a new piece of property.
Yeah, so I think freestyle is the funnest to me, because I'm really big into postseason scouting, and I'm laying into buck beds, and I'm finding a tree ahead of time, and sometimes I'll have cameras in there or not, or I'll know that buck was in the area. But to me, the funnest is just showing up to a new piece. Like last year in Iowa, I shot my buck October 11th, I think it was. And then literally the next day I can just show up in another state and just go and just freestyle with nothing. And if I'm going to freestyle, I just pull up, I start e-scouting areas kind of where I want to go. If I know somebody that lives in the state I'm going to, I might ask for some intel. Like I'm not asking for pins or anything, but I'm just like, hey, like, what part of the state seems to have more deer? Where do you think there's some overlooked stuff? Like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or sometimes I'll just pick something I want to go hunt. Like it'll be new terrain or something, and I just show up to the parking lot. I'll e-scout. I'm looking through all my postseason scouting experience on buck bedding. I can pretty much usually pick out a lot of the buck bedding areas just looking at a map on my phone. Like use Spartan Forge a ton, and I can use a lot of their aerials, UAV and stuff to really hone in and figure out a lot of the buck bedding before I even get there. And then I'll just show up, I'll put everything on my back, put my saddle on, grab my bow first thing in the morning. And then I might, if it's an elevation spot or more open country, I might glass first just to see if I see any deer moving through. And then I'll just go scout and just start going to these areas I think are bedding areas. And then I'll start working the perimeter, and I'll just start looking for rubs, scrapes, tracks, what kind of crops are around. I'm just trying to get my feel. I'm scouting for deer, but I'm trying to get my feel for the property at the same time. If I show up in daylight, maybe, I don't get there like at night and then sleep and then go out. I might drive around, try to find all the parking lots, just get my bearings around the place. Sometimes I'll do that instead of just jumping right in. And then I start pinning everything, and I'm trying to get a feel for like how the whole property lays out. I'm not really diving into like the bedding areas. I'm trying to stay out of them. But if I have to walk by one and that predominant wind's blowing my scent into there, I don't feel like they're kind of used to pressure. It's public land. So I'll go around, I'll mark if there's any tree stands, things like that. If I notice trash on the ground, any kind of pressure like that. You can even talk to like a DNR officer or some local people like that, but I usually don't do that much. I kind of just go and just dive right in and just use my past experience, knowledge to try to figure out what the deer are doing. And that's more like, it sounds really easy the way I talk about it, I guess, but it's really not at the same time. like if you don't have the experience I have, it'll be a lot harder, like picking out like the buck bedding areas. So maybe do more like what terrain features are there, what habitat types. I'm looking for more like diversity. What winds. I'm going to look ahead of time before I leave. I might look at the 10-day forecast and see what winds I'm going to have while I'm going to be there. Then I know, the winds, the bucks usually bedded based upon the wind in most terrains. So the wind over the back and they're looking out. A lot of the things I've been diving into is a lot of the deer have been pretty close to parking lots. A lot of guys been going in really deep right off the get go and pushing the deer out. And the deer have been paying attention to the parking lot. So I've been paying attention to like what's around the parking lot, trying to find overlooked spots like that. And sometimes it's not really that complicated. You can just dive right in there and just pick out like hill country. You can look for some leeward sides that you think, okay, there's a northwest wind. They'll be on the south side of the ridge, and you can try to slip in there and scout your way in and look for rubs and scrapes going up to bedding. Is there any acorns dropping? What's the primary food source? Like if you got corn half mile away, I'm going to look for like a secondary food source in between. And then they have to browse during the day to survive. So you got to look for areas that are a little thicker that got like, different housing sources for them. So that's where that diversity comes in.
That's a appropriate way to look at that. I know with Onyx, that's the one I'm currently using, is that they also have a filter where it turns on the walnut and the acorn trees. Now, Getting back to Spartan Forge, does that app put in the locations of parking on CRP or public land?
Yeah, I mean, you can see the parking on the aerial. The public lands are outlined in blue on Spartan Forge, and you can zoom in and find where the parking lots are at. And if you drive around ahead of time, you'll get a feel for it.
Very nice. I know when I was talking to some of the DNR guys around here, like different counties that I've scouted in, a lot of them just says if it's farm management land, BLM, or whatever the case may be, if you can find a spot to pull over and it's not going to be obstructing the roadway, you're fine. So which is upset, but I'd rather put it someplace where it's kind of designated, because then kind of keeps everybody in the honor system. Because it's like when you come in there, if you're the last one in, you'll know all the vehicles are. So if someone comes up missing, kind of see what's going on. Now, one thing that I learned last year, I was actually paid more attention to thermals, because it's like a lot of times when I hunted in Minnesota, some of the places where I was at, they didn't have much of an elevation change. But now hunting in this in these valleys and such, I actually really pay attention. Like I have one spot where I like setting in because the sun doesn't hit where I set until almost 10 or 11 o'clock at night. So or not at night, but in the morning. We're doing a morning cert, because just basically how the sun comes up and then how it fills the valley full of sun. And it was unique to see that, because it's like I was sitting right up there. I watched a whole bunch of does walk off from one little corner of the area. I was about 100 yards away, so way out of range. But it's just interesting. Like I was up there until 11 o'clock, and then it's like where I was setting it. Then I finally feel that shift of the cold air and the warm thermals pushing everything up and out. That was a very interesting experience, because you have a lot of experience in a lot of that stuff. And I think that's where going with the freestyle attitude, it kind of gives you that opportunity to learn a lot. And the best thing to do it is for hunting is trial by fire, because it's the best way you're going to remember this stuff. Because I've spooked up some big bucks, and it's like, after listening to some of your podcasts, like, that makes more sense now. Now I understand like what's all going on. And this Sunday when I was out tracking a doe, I come across a whole bunch of beds and a whole bunch more beds, stuff like that. It's like, these are very interesting. But my question to you is that how can you tell? Do you have some way of knowledge of like how old the bed is? Like, is there a way to determine like if the bed's fresh within that first 24 hours, or if it's old, like it's 7 days old? Do you have any tried and true things that you've learned that helps pick up on those small hints?
Yeah, so on the thermal deal, we'll go into that first. I carry tons of milkweed with me. I'm like a milkweed dropping freak. So a lot of guys call it wind mapping. So just not the primary winds. I'm mapping thermals too. Like I'll even go in and scout like first thing in the morning before the sun really gets up, or even I'm scouting until dark. I'll drop the thermal, see what they do. And you learn that you can listen to a podcast or watch a video on it, but you never know what it's doing in that spot till you're out there and you're dropping the milkweed. And there'll be instances where you'll see a buck and you'll be like, well, why is he bedded there on that wind? That doesn't make any sense. But when you get up on the bed and you're dropping the milkweed and you're seeing, then you're understanding the wind's doing something different than what the main wind was doing at the parking lot, or the thermals have some kind of influence into that. And even agricultural flatland has thermals. If there's a creek or a ditch or a little low spot, it'll actually pull the thermals, and you'll notice a lot of the mature bucks will come out of that little low spot because they can smell the whole field first before they walk out into it. So that's something to look into. Water, moving water, even a pond or a lake, it'll change the thermals of the area. A big river system will pull thermals like crazy. So you might have a totally different thermal effect if you're hunting, like, I don't know, the Mississippi, Missouri River, something like that. It could pull like the thermals for like a mile or two almost sometimes.
Really, that kind of that radius. Now, that learning that radius on it, did you hunt some water systems throughout Iowa? Then is that how you kind of picked up on that?
Yes. Sometimes I hunt the Missouri River. So it's got, after heavy rains and the river's really pumping really fast, it'll really influence the thermal pool and the river bottoms, like, up to the lowest hills and stuff.
All right.
So it'll pull them a lot harder. So you might be able to influence that in the bluff country when you're hunting a buck or something, because you might think you don't have the thermals, but the water's pulling it a certain way. So you can actually use that to your advantage. Like high pressure system, when the front comes through and you get that super high pressure, it'll pull your thermal straight up into the atmosphere. So you can almost hunt on the wrong wind sometimes because you're getting that super hard thermal pull. Just little things like that. So always be learning and checking and running the milkweed and stuff like that. What was the other question? Sorry.
Oh, how can you determine the freshness or the age of a bed?
Yeah. If it's beat down bare dirt, like something's been living there, if something lays there long enough, the vegetation will die off. It'll be like cleared up, smashed down. So I can tell just by like the impression how often the bed's being used usually. Because I don't know if you've ever seen where you walk up and it's like green all the way around, or everything's fresh, and then all of a sudden there's just like a super dry, like big round dirt spot. It's almost like if you laid a piece of plywood out in your yard for a couple of months and then you pulled it out, all the grass is dead and it's just bare dirt. You know what I mean? So you just have that bare dirt indentation where that plyboard was in your yard. Mm-hmm. So that's like a really well used bed, and a lighter bed won't be as defined. And then hill country, when you get all the fresh leaves, I actually like to find my beds in the morning, like mid-morning, because the dew from the night will still be all over the ground except for where that deer was laying. And you'll kind of see the leaves smashed down and a little impression, because the hill country beds are really hard to see sometimes. Like guys walk right by them all the time. But if you're watching that morning dew and you notice that little dry spot, then you'll see that little bed in there. And it's just like slight impression you can pick up on the bed in hill country a lot easier.
So when you're going out there, like because I know you mentioned October, you only do afternoon sets. So when you're out there in the mornings, when do you go out there? Do you go at 10, 11 o'clock, or how do you know when the deer's up out of their bed and you can come and kind of have that, gather that detail?
Sometimes I just go first thing, first light. I'll be out there, gray light, glassing, moving through. They usually bed based on the wind. So if I have a wind where I know that buck's not going to be in there, I might just slide in there and check his bed out if I need to, if I don't feel confident and exactly where that bed's at. That's where you can do some different tactics. Like you could bump, there's a bump and dump. You could slide in close. And if it's a newer area, you might have to do that to know exactly where that bed is and do the exit routes and stuff like that. But just that, you can even do that like postseason scouting, like the morning, first thing in the morning, that deer will be done. In season scouting, the deer's usually in its bed. I'm not doing that as much. But if you bump the deer out, like sometimes you'll just see them, you'll be walking in hill country. There are 2 ridges over and you skyline yourself by accident, you'll see the white tails bounding off. Well, I already blew them out, so I'm just going to go find their beds. So every time I blow a deer out, I go directly to where it was to find where its bed was at. And then I'm going to map that bed. So then to find that bed, you'll see that morning dew will be gone in that little area. And then you'll be able to tell, okay, well, that buck was bedded right here that I just blew out. Then you can mark that, find his exit routes. And then if I get that same wind again, I'll be right back in there, try to manipulate that. And the morning hunting in October is something I'm really trying to figure out, honestly, because, if you think about it, that's a lot of sits you're giving up by not going out in the mornings in October. I could be double sitting. So if I hunted like 15 days, say 15 evenings, well, I could have hunt 15 mornings and I could have had 30 hunts in already. But I think a lot of it's going to be based on weather for me so far. If there's a cold front coming in, it's going to be really cold in the morning, I'll get in there. Or when I was in Missouri and it was like 103 degrees, well, the deer are going to move way more in the morning. But for me, you have to get in there super early because a lot of times I think they're going to beat you back to the beds. And then you got to worry about where your thermals are pooling at and things like that. It's just a lot harder to slide into them in the morning, unless, like, if you have intel and you got a camera out there and the bucks, you're getting pictures of him in the morning in daylight. Why not go in there in the morning and get him between where he's bedding and the camera, and you're going to kill him because he's coming through there in the morning. But a lot of times I find that mobile hunting, doing the freestyle thing in the morning, you're making a ton of noise. It's hard to see. I've set up in trees in the morning in the dark, and then when I got daylight, I couldn't even shoot my bow because I didn't have any shooting lanes. So I had to climb back down and move. So if I do hunt mobile in the morning, I hunt really low, 1-2 sticks. I stay below, I want to be below that canopy. The deer's not expecting me to be there. I'm usually trying to figure out like the J hook, or I'll be right over its bed if I have some kind of terrain feature, or you can do a transitional area. Where I hunt at in Iowa, it's more like open country. And a lot of the setup from the parking lot, you have to walk through the food. So that is a big reason why I don't hunt in the morning too. Because when you go through the food, the deer are there. And then you're blowing them out everywhere. There's no point. You're just ruining your hunt. So I'd rather go in the evening. I can see, scout my way in. Now, hill country, I do like, you can hunt in the morning because you can come in behind them when they're in the food, and you can get on the ridges and maybe down in those thermal hubs and stuff and catch them coming back. But a lot of the spots I hunt, it's more open and just ag land mixed. And it's way harder to get in on the deer in the mornings, but I do try it. Sometimes I'll wait until gray light, like, all the deer move off the fields and the staging areas, and I'll just fly in there like as quick as I can and just get set up. Sometimes I'll hunt a spot in the evening and leave everything in the tree, my sticks, my platform, my bow, everything. And I'll just walk out with my saddle. And then I'll come right back to it in the morning and hunt the same exact spot. Because maybe, that buck didn't come out in the evening. Maybe he's not going to come by here and catch my ground scent. And then he'll come back in this way in the morning and I can get a shot on him. So that's something else that you could try too.
That's actually really intelligent to be able to actually put that forethought to it. One tactic I adapted this past Saturday's hunt is that I went in low key. I brought in just my bow, my binos, a knife, and we have deal with predators here, so I did bring a sidearm with me, but that's it. That's all I came in there with. And it's like I felt a lot more comfortable, a lot less opportunities to make noises. Like a couple of years ago, sitting in a tree stand, I accidentally put my foot down on a buckle and four ears go right up and look right at me. It's like, shit.
Yeah,
So
it
it's
happens,
a,
man.
and then all of a sudden you just see the tails just walking the other direction. It's like, son of a gun. If there was only a guy over that other corner over there, he'll be in seventh heaven.
I've dropped cell phones, range finders, releases out of my pocket. They slap your platform loud. I've dropped sticks. You name it, I've done it. I've broken branches like a dummy. I've reached up and grabbed one and pulled myself up and it snaps right off. I'm like, oh, this is done. I just grab my crap and I just go to a different spot because I'm like, that buck probably heard that. He ain't coming out here till after dark.
Definitely, man.
Sometimes I'll still hunt it anyways. I'm like, oh, maybe I could get away with that noise. But I'm a minimalist at heart. Like, I don't want to carry a bunch of crap or manage all of it. I want really simple, streamlined, very efficient setup. I don't care as much about speed because I feel like the faster you go, you get really clumsy and you get loud. And I'm setting, like in Missouri, I was setting up 50 yards away from some of these bucks that were bedded. So you can't make any noise. So you got to go real slow, be very tactical about all your movements, and just, kind of be like a ninja when you get in there. And other times, if you're hunting like the rut in a pinch point or something, who really cares if you make a little bit of noise because that buck's usually not close by. But the way I hunt within that 100 yards of bedding, all my gear's got to be ultra quiet and I have to really watch where I'm walking and what I'm doing the whole entire time and try to get in there without making any unnatural noises.
Yeah, that is I think it's the first lesson most hunters learn about setting in a tree stand or ground hunting is like making sure they go the extra mile to clean up their area beforehand and such. I've always seemed like I get away with a little bit more movement when I'm moving around from spot to spot is when the wind's up, really moving,
Yeah.
the leaves are cooking. I find myself like not as scared to like I'm bored, get up and move to a different spot, and then just kind of working with the wind to that spot to my next area. Because I've done that a few mornings where I'll set one spot from sunrise to about 8 or 9, then I'll move to another spot because it's like, well, I know there's deer coming from another spot because I know at that point in time the thunderbolts had changed, so I could sit up above and then they'll be coming below me. It depends if there's a water source. Like I'll do that every once in a while. And what is your do you like hunting near water sources, or do you kind of steer away from them?
I let the buck dictate where I'm hunting.
Oh, that's true.
I'm taking the game to the buck. Like wherever that buck is, that's where I'm gonna go. That's why I've been spending time like scouting in the postseason and different terrain types I'm not familiar with, learning all the bedding, how they move, and all, because I want to be really well rounded. So when I go out of state, I just want to feel like I can dive in and still have some keys to the driver's seat, and I can get in there on them. The wind thing, there'll actually be a lot of spots where I won't hunt if it's not windy because you're just not getting in there quiet enough. So wind's like my favorite. I love high wind days, and a lot of times I might not even set up. I know where the bucks are bedding at. I might crawl in there and try to kill them in their bed off the ground because I have that wind cover making all the noise, all the movement around me. You can get away with a lot more. Like, you get those dry leaves and stuff. So hill country, I love it when it's windy. Corn, if you're in ag land, pretty much anywhere with the high winds, I really like. And I actually think guys set up too late in the day. When I go hunting, I go in really early because I want to get in there on those day winds because the wind's always up in the middle of the day. That's when I actually like to go in the setup. I'll set up way earlier than I need to because I feel like the deer are kind of sleeping. You know how your wife or something tries to wake you up and she's having a conversation with you and you don't remember any of it and you're like all groggy. Well, I feel like a buck's the same way. He's just laying in his bed. He's asleep. He's up looking around. You might accidentally make a noise, but he's just like, oh, what's that? I don't know what that was. And he goes right back to sleep. Where if you wait until a lot of guys go in like 2-3 hours before dark, that buck's awake. He knows he's going to move soon. So he's at high alert. He's listening. He's watching. He's seeing what the other deer are doing. So I feel like you get away with a lot more if you go in the middle of the day and get set up early. And you have that day when to hide your noise, your movements. So you can get really close to that buck and get up the tree and set up, and then you're all dialed in with your system and you're comfy. And then when he comes out, man, you're ready to go instead of hurrying too, because you're like, oh man, it's going to get dark soon. I got to rush. And then you're making even more noise. You're walking really fast. You're stepping on sticks because you're in a hurry. So my advice to a lot of guys is go in a lot earlier than what you need for sure.
That's what I do. I go usually, if I'm doing an evening set, I'll go in at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because this way then I know I'm going to get there, like you advised, with the peak wind, playing the wind to my favor. Like most of them are already got done eating, so they're going napping, and then I will go the extra. Actually, but training, I've been hitting the gym myself, so this way I can actually make these climbs, these elevation changes to the bluff country without being winded, because I mean that stuff will echo. But swinging out wider than I need to. So if I'm coming into one area, like I'll do a big J hook. Let's see here. On Saturday, I was setting situations like, how we've made noises and spoken a doe. Well, that's the exact same thing I did Saturday. And she was coming down the tree line, coming right at me. She was only 4 yards away, and all of a sudden I see the tail go up, and it's like, son of a gun. At that point in time, it's like I only got maybe 45 minutes until the shooting light's over with. I'm just going to stand the rest of the time. And lo and behold, that doe comes right back around. That's the doe I shot. And I watched her come through. I ranged out where she was going to be at, knew she'd be at 25 yards. And I just happened to hit low and hit that pocket right in front of the heart and missed all of the arteries there. And we thought we had good blood. I had good pictures of blood. And it's just, as we got going, the thing is that she never stopped running after I shot her. Like, there's no spot where she bedded down or anything. Because I mean, I stayed in my tree stand for another solid 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
And then I let a buddy of mine know, hey, I shot a doe. It's like, if you're bored, you can come on out. He didn't show up until again for another half hour. So it's like, I didn't leave my area where I shot her for almost an hour and a half. But as we were going through this stuff like that, and he parked where she actually ran right by. But as we went through everything, we tracked her for 300 yards. Downhill, then uphill again, and then we stopped hunting because we lost all sight of blood. We had no idea where she went because she opened it to field and she just booked it. Well, went back out Sunday morning with my wife, and I decided, like, we're giving up. Our morale's running low, so I come around this embankment where it probably had a solid 50-foot increase of it, just like steep angle going up. And I come up and I see a spot of blood, and then it was decent size amount, and then it got thinner and thinner, and then that's when I knew she went across the road to the other side. And it's like, I tracked her another 110 yards looking for blood, and then she crossed the road. There's no blood on the road, no blood on the thing. So it's like one of the things where probably she's going to hopefully cross fingers she'll heal, or there was 2 packs while we were out there Saturday night just BSing, and found out there was 2 packs out there of coyotes. So it's like some coyotes may have ate like kings one night.
Yeah, those coyotes can get on them quick. Those briskets hits that are usually non-fatal, and I really appreciate you taking that extra time to actually try to find that deer, because I've already seen in Iowa and read a bunch about guys like only looking 70 yards and then giving up on finding a deer already, then to go out and shoot another one. Or I've read a lot of crazy stories over the weekend of just like, I don't know, a guy shot like 3 deer and didn't recover 2 of them, so he shot that other one. And then like, they're not doing the due diligence that they need to do. Like, when you shoot an animal, you should do everything in your power to find that animal out of respect and for the animal, and just as an outdoorsman, as a sportsman. Like, it's our duty. If you're going to take something's life, you should go to all ends to try to find that animal you chose to kill. So that's one thing that was, when you said that, it just brought up in my mind, like, we chase these animals, we think about them every day, like to some crazy level that I do. My whole life is based around a whitetail deer. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, why shoot a deer and then only track it 70 yards and then give up on it, and not, keep going, or let it lay overnight. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I guess I just don't understand that when guys do that. And I've seen it and heard about it a lot, over the weekend, and even down in Missouri. It just kind of bothers me, I guess. But I don't know. You just brought that up. I don't want to
Oh yeah,
get
I
into
get
that
it.
soapbox.
I mean, it was frustrating because it's like I practiced an awful lot and shooting an awful lot all season long, but I was blessed to have not only another friend of mine live in Star come out, but he called reinforcements, brought another guy out to come out. So there was three of us looking for it, scattering all over the area. And like my buddy Ryan that came out with me, I was leading and he had a stick. And so every time we found blood, stick dropped, and then I'd go out a little bit further and I'd look for more, find it, and we move the stick again. So we took it chunk by chunk by chunk, so this way then we wouldn't lose track of it, so this way then we can always go back. And he was recovering from an appendix surgery. He still came out. It's like he said, I won't be able to drag her out, but I will at least carry your bow. And it's like, sweet, man. It's like, I appreciate it. And then it was we all went, we stayed out there for a while doing it, and then that following morning my wife came out, so we had 4 sets of eyes looking for the blood. And it's just one of those things where it's just like each up, but it happens. Like then my father-in-law, he messages me yesterday and he's telling me, he's like, yeah, I've lost 6 bucks over the last 40 years. And it's like, I still remember every one of them. So it's like, it's one of those things that a sportsman knows the treacherous emotional roller coaster a guy goes through, or I should say a sportsman goes through, because there's a lot of talented women out there too. I mean, I've seen some beautiful bucks over the weekend harvested in Iowa and Illinois, and out there no, Illinois doesn't open yet for another 2 more weeks, I think. And then, but out there in Ohio, because they open up the same weekend as Iowa does. And man, it's one of those things. Well, I needless to say, I'm taking about a week off for going hunting, but then tomorrow I head out to Okoboji to spend a week out there fishing with my old man and a bunch of other guys that got invited to. They've been doing this biannual trip for the last 20 years out to Okoboji.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's usually in between 11 to 15 guys, sometimes even more than that. They get they have a standing reservation. So it's like, as soon as the trip's over, they're already booking for the following May and then October. And then just it's like, they just got a standing reservation. And the resort / hotel has such a good rapport with them that they kind of let them have the free run of the place about how they deal with everything, because just of how well the mutual respect that goes back and forth. And oddly enough, this trip's only cost me like $150. I'm thinking I'm gonna spend more money in gas than I will on the trip.
That's happens sometimes.
Yeah, I'm just excited because it's like I was hoping for this deer to bring with me, and we have this fresh venison, and like I had a buddy of mine like waiting for me to come over because he's never broken down a deer before. So it's like, I'll gut it out there in the field and I'll bring it back. We'll hoist up in the garage and we'll sit there and spend the rest of the night, burn the midnight oil, and like teaching him how to cape it and cutting all the meat and showing how to break down all that fun stuff. I like teaching that stuff because it's so rewarding. And plus I'm teaching somebody a life skill that's gonna, like, at least they may forget, but once they start cutting forward and cutting into things, then that memory kind of comes back, because it's a very impressionable situation when you're young going through it, or when you're an adult going through it. It's something you're going to retain that information, and but it's the environment that I create and that really solidifies the impression. Kind of like with you being a teacher, like giving a positive impression to all these kids that it's going to hopefully last them a lifetime.
Yeah, that's what you hope for anyway. Sometimes you don't know if you're making that difference or not. And and going back to the doe real quick, man, bow hunting's hard, man. There's so much happening. It's a live, moving animal, and you're got emotions, you're breathing, you're shaking, you're holding that bow back, and you never know what the animal's going to do. Sometimes you don't see a branch. I mean, if you hunt long enough, it's going to happen. But there's you know what I mean? There's like, okay, like every now and again it's going to happen, but sometimes there's just like a horrible rate. Some guy will be like, oh, I wanted 30 deer, and you're like, what the heck is this guy doing? I mean, you should be efficient and competent in the woods if you're going to be, hunting. And like I said, do the due diligence the best you can to be as accurate and as skilled as you can be. But it happens. I mean, we've all been there.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I've seen some deer shot in places where you think that deer's got to be dead and it never dies. Like some incredible things. Like there's some pictures you see floating around where like, heck, how the heck did that deer live? Like, it's just crazy how some of these deer make it anyways, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you'll hear stories about a guy, shot a buck and the buck had like 3 bullet wounds and like 2 arrows in it and stuff. Just crazy stuff like that. And going back to what you were talking about, like you were going to teach your buddy the process, the cape the deer out and stuff like that. One of my buddies, Ryan, took his son out, bow hunting in Michigan, and they sat 30 minutes and they shot a big doe, and he took some incredible photos of him and his son and this doe. And just for, his son to go through that with his dad. And then even when they got back, he took them through the process of, hey, this is how you cape it and you cut it up, and they made hamburger out of it. And that's something I never had because my dad wasn't a deer hunter. I mean, I think my dad took me squirrel like once, maybe some groundhogs, but my dad was more of a fisherman. So, man, just seeing that had a big impact on me, just me not having that as a kid and being a teacher. Man, it was almost like that's memories that neither one of them will ever forget. It's almost like, man, would you trade a 200-inch buck to have that moment with your son? You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's not always about like big bucks and stuff. It's about mentorship and just the memories you can make with like family members, your best friend, your son. So sometimes I think, we can get a little off track with things a little bit, but that was just a really awesome hunt that really made me think about things over the weekend.
Oh, with me and those gentlemen down there. Oh, you're with your friend up there in Michigan. Yeah, I get it. So, what do you got going on for the future here? I know when I listened to you on I think it was a DIY Sportsman, there's a 200 class buck you're chasing there in Iowa, right?
Yeah, I found him last year and been running around trying to find him. I think the crop rotation play has affected me a little bit because I think corn's king, man. I don't care what anybody says. Like all these places, when there's corn, I'm finding giants and big bucks. When there's beans there, they're gone.
Oh yeah, good luck.
So it's just putting those puzzle pieces. Where did he shift to? Some bucks are still shifting right now. Last year I didn't pick him up until second week of October. So is he going to show back up in the same places second week of October? I got some cameras out just waiting to pick him up. Waiting. We got a big cold front coming this weekend.
I saw that. Yeah.
Like 29 degrees a couple of mornings this weekend. It's gonna be
great.
It's gonna be getting rowdy. It's the time to be out. So it's like, man, do I want to jump in on some other bucks I found that are more like, that 150 to 170 range, or do I want to go no balls, no bucks and just dive in on this 200 and hope he's there? But if he's not there, I mean, I'm not out anything because I can just go right back onto those other bucks that are smaller and get on them. But a 200-inch buck is pretty rare to find on public land, so it's almost worth taking the gamble and just doing it. So yeah, I'm gonna stay here in Iowa until I tag out. I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, it's Iowa, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
I'm not gonna go hunt somewhere else when I can be hunting Iowa. So once I get done in Iowa, I'll probably drop back down to Missouri to try to get on one of those mature bucks I found. Or I might take some random trip somewhere. I was thinking like maybe Oklahoma. I was thinking about Ohio, but they have that really bad EHD come through the last month or so.
Yeah, and Indiana too. They've been getting pretty hard with that.
Yeah, I think Maryland got it really bad as well.
Oh, really?
And so I'm probably going to veer away from those states just because the EHD thing. I might jump into Illinois, like maybe Southern Illinois. I could go into Nebraska and hunt there since I didn't get to early season because I was sick. Or I could go up to Dakotas, Wisconsin. I was thinking about maybe Wisconsin might be fun. I got some
Come on up
buddies
here, man. I got a place for you. I have a bedroom, so you that takes care of half your bill, and then I can get in addition Onyx, and we can show you all of the hunt land because I also have a big, I think it's like a 3,000 acre woods that's 5 minutes away that I haven't even looked at yet. I was looking on the DNR website today, and it's like, well, there's parking here, there's parking here, there's parking there. I could drive through here. It's like, this could be doable.
Yeah, I think all that cattails and marsh and everything up there would be cool. Are you more like Western Wisconsin, or are you in the marshland?
Oh yeah, that's up by Trumpelah where the big bucks are usually shot. Historically, they're up over there. So yeah, I'm all western side of that. So there's a lot of opportunities. So, and when you're talking about a water source or like having multiple, like a river system that runs through it, like because I'm only like La Crosse is right on the Mississippi. So there is a spot where you can hunt some marshland, some swampland, but also dealing with the Black River and such in the Mississippi. So you have some opportunities there for them to really add it in. And plus the tag is only $160 over the counter for a buck tag. I mean, that's ridiculously cheap.
That is crazy.
Minnesota's the same thing. Minnesota's 160, but you jump down. Well, a non-resident Iowa's like after all said and done, you're out about $1,000.
Yeah.
And if you jump over to Illinois, it's about 500, 600 there. So it's kind of a deal when you come up here. It's just gas.
Yeah, that ain't too bad. I mean, it's not that bad of a drive to Wisconsin from where I live in Iowa. So might be a rut thing. I just run up there for the rut.
Hey man, I'd love to have you up here. I'll have a place for you if you want to spend 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 days.
Yeah, that's
well, whatever. How your works with your school schedule and such. So
I got lots of time off, vacation and stuff. I take a lot of days. I save all my time for the fall, man. I got it all planned out. Like everything goes to fall, dude. I don't take any days off any other time of the year, really. I try not to. And then I get that late season. I hunt a lot more than a lot of people because I get that winter break. I get like 2 weeks off for winter break. So all that holiday stuff, I usually don't hunt on Christmas. I might slide out in the morning maybe if I want to freeze to death, but it's been kind of warm the last couple of years. But last year,
it was ridiculously warm.
Yeah, except for like January, a buddy of mine from Alabama shot a buck up here, and it was like -7. I helped him drag it out. That was not too much fun.
Yeah.
But sometimes it'll be like, I've hunted at -30 before. I'm pretty tough. I just get out there when I can and whatever weather conditions that I want to be in. I don't like hunting in like heavy rain or storms, but I like to get out there right after that rain ends, and you can move around in that rain a lot because it doesn't make any noise. So I love wet conditions. So wet's fun. Snow's a blast to hunt in because you can do a lot of tracking.
Yes. Yeah. That's why like when you get into those weird years where there's no snow until January or late December, it's like it gets a little frustrating when you want to have that ability to track, especially when all of the leaves have either turned that red or brown or those colors that look just like blood. And like a fun fact for Wisconsin, where I hunt at, we hunt until January 31st. So that is an upside.
Wow.
So September, well, this year was the 17th to January 31st. That's a good chunk amount of time to be out in the woods.
Yeah, Iowa ends January 10th. I think Missouri's a week after that, maybe the 16th, I think. But bad. Yeah, I think Ohio runs until like the 31st or even into February, maybe.
No, it runs into the 31st. I had TJ Johnson from Appalachian Chase, and he shot his buck the last day of Ohio season last year, and he was 160, 170, something like that. Massive buck. And you would never guess it, but the guy does really well. He has a really good thriving pool business out there, oddly enough, in Maryland. Or is it Delaware? But yeah, it's like you said, it's quite odd. Like we'll be digging pools and doing yard work and stuff like that, because he's been able to scale his business to and having a really good reputation. But man, he takes just him and his wife, and he drives back and forth from there all the way over to Ohio quite frequently. There's been times where he was saying that from the rut up until he shot that buck, he was going out there almost every weekend.
Yeah, that's fun to me. That sounds fun to me though.
Oh yeah, right. That he loves it. He's young. He's ambitious. He's got the bank account to be able to help him do it. But he just found the right thing in life and 10x'd it and loving life, man. He's doing really, really well.
Yeah, I love that grind. Or you can jump down in Alabama and hunt the rut for 2 months almost, I think, because every part of Alabama has a different rut. It's insane. It's crazy. Yeah, because they imported all these deer from different states, and they kept their rut genetically, so they rut at the same time. So if you imported deer from Minnesota, they'd still rut in Alabama when they rut in Minnesota, and if you brought deer from somewhere else, they rut at the same time they rutted where they were from. So you got all these pockets of transplanted deer. So the rut is crazy down there, man, because you can hunt the rut for 2 months. You just bounce around different parts of Alabama.
Isn't that something, man? So do you have any bucket list whitetail hunts that you want to hit? Do you go out to? I know for me, I like to go out. It'd be fun to go out there to Arizona or into northern Mexico and do a cows deer rifle hunting. I'm not that talented for a bow, but it'd be fun for a rifle at least.
Let's see. I think I'm going to try to go elk hunting next September out in Colorado, over the counter DIY elk hunt.
Awesome.
I'd love to go to Alaska and hunt some moose or caribou or something up in Alaska. Would be cool. For whitetail, for me, Finland, man.
Oh, that's right. You were talking about that.
Yeah, they have over 100,000 whitetail deer. They transplanted 10 and only 6 live, but now they got over 100,000. And
wow,
there's some guys on the Beast forum that live in Finland that saddle hunt, man, and they show these really nice bucks on there. It'd just be cool to go to Finland, just to go whitetail. It'd be awesome.
Heck yeah.
That's definitely, I've been looking into how to get that done. New Zealand, there's an island you can just go DIY hunt out there. You just pay for a plane ticket, tags are cheap. They got a bunch of different species. A buddy of mine, Spencer, was talking to me about that. That sounds really fun. And I'd like to go back to some of the places I lived when I was growing up. My grandparents they had a farm in West Virginia and they're buried there. So I'd like to go to West Virginia just to shoot a buck for my grandparents. I think that'd be really sentimental to me. So I think I might do that soon. Go out there and maybe drop down to some other states. Just fun. I mean, Kentucky. I think I'm going to go to Kentucky next year too. I think that'll be awesome.
Definitely. That'd be awesome. Especially hooking up with Ben Henderson or Matt Powell. I mean, those guys would give you some good details, some intel.
Yeah, I think I want to hunt the land between the lakes. That has the most appeal to me for some reason. Just big, giant public land out there. There's giants I hear that run around out there.
Wouldn't surprise me. A sleeper state for moose is Maine. Maine would be a good place to get it. Talk to the guys from the Forgotten Trails Outdoors. They're based Pennsylvania, Ohio area, and stuff like that, and they're putting tags up there, putting in for tags, preference points up there in Maine, because there's a lot of moose up there, and it's not really talked upon because it's a very difficult hunt, but it's one of those things it's something that people overlook for.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have to look into that. That sounds really cool. I just love hunting, man. I don't care. I'll hunt anywhere. I'll waste the tag and I'd go to Michigan and hunt. It don't matter to me. Anywhere. I just love to go. I might go to South Carolina. Got some friends down there I made and go hunt down there. Just wherever, man. I don't care. I probably don't care about hunting some states like Florida and stuff. I don't know if that's for me or not, but more power to the guys that want to hunt there. But Montana would be cool. I just like traveling and hunting. Canada would be awesome, I think.
Yeah, if I didn't have a 9-year-old in Minnesota, my wife would agree with me. It's like we would actually, because we both work remotely, we would actually just get a nice, like, spend the money, get a nicer RV or a camper, and just hunt and fish and drive around.
Yeah, I'm actually looking to get out of teaching and then get into a remote job, because you got my idea, man. I can just have Wi-Fi, right, and have like a satellite internet on my van or whatever I build, and just
Definitely.
I can work. I can park in the public land parking lot and work during the day, and then when it's go time, I can log out and just run right out in the woods and hunt. Man, it'd be awesome. It'd be like the life right there, dude. Because I love traveling and seeing new places, and the road life doesn't bother me. I'm a military brat, so I mean, I'm used to moving around. It's normal to me, like all the moving and stuff. And I'm a low maintenance kind of guy. I don't need any fancy stuff, man. I rough it. I've slept in some crazy places to go deer hunting. You know what I mean? It doesn't bother me at all.
Wasn't up until I met my wife. It's like I lived out of, I could pack up and move in one setting, because like I could put everything in a Oldsmobile 88 or one of those Cutlass Supremes. It'd be a load, all my entire apartment in that right there. That's how basic I am. Now I have a collection of stuff. So I have a couple of bows, several firearms. So now it's like, it has to be a little more strategic planning behind something like that. But man, yeah, it's like, that's the ideal. Like when I got 9 years and she hits 18, and hopefully she'll have an idea on what she wants to do. And her mom's not leaving, so she can just live with her mom. And it's like, my child support's done. I'm getting that money back in my bank account. That's tag money now.
Yeah, if I tried to move, man, it'd be like moving a Bass Pro Shops. It'd be bad. Like, and then all my mounts and stuff. Like, oh my gosh, it would be bad, man.
You have to find somebody that'd be willing to, like, you almost have to reach out to some pro shops, like, hey, can you store this and say, like, use this as an advertising thing, because this way we just kind of work off this will pay for its leverage. So it's like, this was shot by Erik Rendell in Iowa in 2022. And while you're all gallivanting, all
my buddies would probably want my mounts, and then they would say they shot them to all their buddies when they come over or something like that.
Especially if you have the ones that will have a really good poker face and start messing with you, start messing with those people. It's like, no, I didn't shoot it.
Yeah, it'd be funny.
Well, man, Erik, this is a fun. I wanted to do something different. I think we achieved it. I greatly appreciate. Thank you for coming on. I mean, this has been in the works for a long time. So, is there anything you want to let anybody know? Like, how do people reach you on social media?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, Instagram right now. I'm messing around with a bunch of other ideas I have for like some other things I'm in the works. So I'll probably be having a YouTube channel soon. It'll just be my name, Rendell Erik. You can just look me up if you have any questions. Feel free to hit me up. I love talking to people. I'll help anybody out. And just no balls, no bucks, man. Just get in there, get it done. If you mess up, you mess up. Hunting is. I heard Dan Infall one time say, hunting is just failure. Every time you said you don't kill a deer, you failed. You know what I mean? It's just you're building failures until you succeed. So don't be afraid to fail. I mean, you're not out anything. I mean, could you kill that buck? Maybe, maybe not. Like if you bumped him or not. Just have fun. Kill what you want to. Like if you want to shoot that buck, shoot that buck. If that what makes you happy, like don't care what other people say to you or talk. You know, don't worry about that buck bashing crap. Like, just do what you want. It's your tag, your money, your time, your experience, and just have fun. Like, take the pressure off and just go out there and get it done and just have a blast, make memories, and, you know, don't take it too seriously.
There you go. That's some great words of wisdom. And to close it off, do you even hunt beds, bro?
No balls, no bucks.
There we go. Well, thank you everybody for tuning into another episode of Bucks of America podcast. You can find me streaming all major platforms. I have content in all the major platforms as well, for whether it be YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. I'm everywhere to try to introduce people to folks like Rendell Erik and Ben Harrison and Matt Powell and Chris Ham and just go out there and support the podcast and stuff like that. We appreciate everybody that tuned in tonight. So have a good night, y'all.